I know we're running a little bit behind schedule. We had some technical difficulties, but we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, Mr. McCormick, thank you for being our DJ. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. Hopefully, thank you for joining us today. We're excited to be here and to really not so much launch a new initiative on financial literacy in Riverside County, but to, we've been doing this work already. We've been doing college affordability in our county, how to FAFSA completion, California Dream Act completion, this is you in our county. So just excited to be here and share with you some updates. Hopefully you got my email earlier that, these updates are happening and we want to make sure you have the latest information. So go ahead and next slide, I want to introduce, we're going to talk today. We're excited to have, and you heard his music intro. This is Superintendent Mr. Mike McCormick from Val Verde Unified and Assistant Superintendent Mark Lenore from Val Verde Unified also. We were planning on having Paris Union High School District join us. We had some technical difficulties, so we're going to bring them back for another session. There's so much wealth of information, they could each do their own session anyway, so everything happens for a reason. Next slide. So we're really here to talk about, if you have, first do virtual meeting tips, and then I'll talk about why we're here. If anything, this is going to be recorded. We have it posted to share out. Please use the chat feature. We're going to stay on and answer all your questions until the very end. Every effort has been made for us not to have Zoom bombers or anything like that, but it happens. If it happens, just log off and log right back in and we'll be good to go. Next slide. So you're going to see more emails and invitations and more opportunities to really get involved in financial literacy. An initiative, like I said, we focused a lot on college affordability in Riverside County. And most of you, know me as the Executive Director of College and Career Readiness, Catalina Cifuentes. But we're going to expand on that moving forward. Dr. Gomez, our new county superintendent, is passionate about financial literacy, especially with students. Right now, we talk about your future after high school, but we don't always spend time to have them understand, investments and budgeting. And students are coming to us. I didn't know I had to buy my own books the first year of college because I don't get my financial aid check for 30 days. More of those conversations around financial literacy, and not just in high school, but in a middle school and elementary school. So stay tuned for more sessions on financial literacy. But this day is really, it all goes with the college affordability. All right, next slide. So the governor's proposal. So I'm going to put in the chat 2 links to his recent K-12 education budget report and higher education budget report. So the governor has adopted, and he's pushing for FAFSA as a requirement in our K-12 school districts, not a graduation requirement, right? You're going to hear today from Val Verde that actually made it a graduation requirement, but a requirement for LEAs to work with students for completion. They're in the process. He's put this in his proposal in both K-12 and in higher education. So what that means is, I'm going to talk about a bill that's also going through. If this makes it through, we'll know by May, the May revise, it will start next year. So they're not just saying, okay, here's a requirement, you have to do it Santiago High School or John W. North. They're also going to put funding behind it, where school districts will be able to submit for funding to help with this work. Maybe it's to have counselors work on some Saturdays to help FAFSA completion, or maybe college and career technicians to maybe help offset the cost so you can hire one. Different ideas. Each school district will be able to submit some type of budget ask to say this is what we want to do to help increase FAFSA. So his real big push is we're leaving, conservative estimates say we leave close to $2 billion of federal money on the table as a state because kids don't do the application. I know all of you school counselors that are on right now, you probably have students that did not community college and they paid for community college and they didn't realize I could have done a FAFSA. And we have some schools that have done great and really pushed this initiative and really pushed this information. So when it's in his budget, he's passionate about this. He wants this to happen for our state. And he also wants to build in systems to make it happen in K-12. So that's why it was important for us to have this. I want you to be prepared, one, but I want you to hear from our districts that have done this and how they do this. Because right away, the first question I get from counselors is, Catalina, there's no way we can do this. There's 5 of us. And Val Verde and our amazing 2 leaders are going to share with you how they do it. It does not just rely on the counseling, and it's the entire school district to make this happen. So next slide is We also have an assembly bill, and this assembly bill just made it through it's actually, it's an appropriations where they're trying to figure out how to, the money piece. So we got, the governor wants this to happen in his budget. And then we also have an assembly bill that one of local, she's out of San Bernardino County, Assembly Member Eloise Gomez Reyes, who also put in an AB 469 that's pretty much the same language, not a graduation requirement. We're not going to hold students from graduating, but we're going to hold and work with school districts to ensure students have this opportunity. That one made it through committee. It's now moving up the chain as well. So all of these decisions will come, we'll know what's happening by May. But the reality is, like I said, they're looking at funding. It's not a requirement, and not a graduation requirement, sorry, not a graduation requirement, but they're also looking at, they're going to have an opt-out process. We all know we have students that don't qualify for either the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act. And so we're looking at opt-out requirement, opt-out procedures to do that. And Valverde will talk about what their opt-out looks like. So I don't want you, some of you may have, I have someone that's in the military and they don't want to go. Oh, they don't want to do their FAFSA, they're going to the Navy, and that's okay. But it's really about empowering the parents and the students to make that decision, not to submit it and not to leave them, oh, you didn't go to the workshop, so you maybe didn't get the help you needed. So it's about building a real equity system framework. And like I said, I can't say enough, part of rebuilding our state after the pandemic and everything, we leave too much federal dollars on the table. So go ahead, next slide. So with that, we know we have our dashboard and how they're going to look at that data and how they're going to monitor that data. But I want to go ahead and turn it over to what you came for, which is to hear from our superintendent, Mike McCormick. You can go to the next slide. So it's important that, leadership matters. And it's important that you hear from the leadership, from the superintendent, from the assistant sup. We can have their counselors come and co-present as well, but you're going to see the power of what happens from the leadership down to make this happen. And so Val Verde Unified was the first school district in our state to make it a graduation requirement. And they're going to share their journey with you and tell you how everybody's involved in this equation. Everybody's a part of the conversation. And they're a big reason why they've been able to push this. And our superintendent actually testified before the assembly on how we can do this and why it's important. And a few of our districts that are on this call today, shout out to Desert Sands Unified, they put FAFSA completion in their LCAP. They actually put funding and a completion number of improvement in their LCAP as an example. So you guys are leaders in the state. Riverside County is the leader in the state when it comes to financial aid and application completion. And like I said, as this comes, I've figured if it doesn't happen, if it doesn't pass, let's be proactive and let me start giving you some information to start thinking about it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our two amazing leaders from Val Verde. And thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you, Catalina. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is Michael McCormick, and I'm the proud superintendent of the Val Verde Unified School District. It's been my home for more than 25 years, not as superintendent. That's just been the last 6. And then my good friend and colleague, Mr. Mark Lenore, who oversees all the education programs in the district, is joining me today too. And he's really going to do the majority of the talking as we move through the slides. But just a little bit about Val Verde. This is kind of our one pager. We're serving around 20,000 students. We've got a very diverse community of scholars that we serve. 84% of our students are participating in the National School Lunch Program. About a fifth of our students are learning English as a second language. We're over to 75% Hispanic, 13% African American. And you can see our 4 LCAP goals. You probably can't read those. It's a little small, but one of the things that we're excited about is having FAFSA completion at 97% or greater. And we've been the state award winners several years in a row on the Race to Submit, which is at the state level. And, this is our mission statement, and something that we think is super important for us. And we started this in 2017. And so we've been doing this a while. And of course, you get to iterate and improve on things just a little bit. So I think this is the real key. So this to me is, rather than have like a multi-page binder of a strategic plan that gets thrown on the shelf, this is our one pager. And here's the thing that, and this is our board goals. So right in our board goals as a measurable outcome is right there about FAFSA submission at a rate of 97% at our comprehensive high schools. And so when you embed this type of work, as you know, Desert Sands talked to, Catalina mentioned them, gave them a shout out. The idea is that this should be something that serves as a focus throughout the entire system, from the Board of Education, superintendent, cabinet, district level leaders, site level leaders, certainly our teacher and counselor leaders and our support staff leaders, so that we have the whole system kind of driving this initiative. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Mr. Lenore.
Okay, thanks, Mike. I'm Mark Lenore. I'm the assistant superintendent in Val Verde. And I got the pleasure of working at our county office back in 2013. And as a result of that, I was able to dive into the things that most people never got the ability to dive into: college and career readiness. Obviously, we started the counselor network and a number of other initiatives that have now kind of permeated Riverside County and now different parts of the state. But in 2014, we got a call from Arnie Duncan saying, "Hey, we're hearing that you're doing some good stuff. Could you come out to the U.S. Department of Ed, share with us and 10 other communities what you're doing? And, we'll see where it goes from there." There's the ability where you might end up getting more exposure with different things. And so we went, presented, and then we got another invitation to come back to President Obama's College Opportunity Day of Action. And we were pretty proud because on that day, our initiative was the only initiatives that he referred to in his 45-minute speech. And the rest was history. It just kind of took off from there. But I guess what I'm here to tell you is this: what we learned in from Chicago Public Schools and the U.S. Department of Ed, any effective educational initiative needs to involve all layers of the organization, including the top, your district leadership and your Board of Education. And if you're a counselor or site administrator on the call here today and you're saying, "Well, my superintendent doesn't talk about these things," or "My assistant superintendent doesn't talk about these things," this is your opportunity to lead the leaders. And what we're going to do is just talk about our system and talk about how we actually implemented our FAFSA graduation requirement. If you want to go to the next slide, Mike. So one day we were in cabinet, Mike tells me, "Hey, what are we doing with FAFSA completion?" And I shared with him what we had going on. And he said, "I think Louisiana just implemented it as a state graduation requirement." And I said, "Really? Okay." So we got out of cabinet. As soon as I got out of cabinet, I was on the phone with the Louisiana State Department of Education. And about a half hour later, they called me back and we had a great conversation. And they let us know that it was about 3 years in the making, but they had the whole state taken care of with implementation ready to go. So I kind of listened to all their programs and processes, and literally just took everything that Louisiana spent 3 years on. And 6 weeks later, it was a graduation requirement in Val Verde, about 6 to 8 weeks later. We can go to the next slide. And we know that year they led the country with FAFSA completion, because statewide, it was now a graduation requirement. So overnight, Louisiana came from nowhere to number one because they had everyone on the same page and they were working as a system. And I think that's so important. Next slide. So, what did I do to prepare our Board of Education? What I did basically is every Friday I write a board update. I let the board know all the great things that are going on in the district, just information on different programs. And I let them know that we had been working on FAFSA completion. And what I knew right there was I had to educate my board on the reasons why this was so important. And FAFSA completion had been something that stuck with me ever since I was a high school principal. I was a high school principal back when the economic downturn was in mainstream, in main stride, I should say. And I was reading and reading, and we knew at that point that the US had enough student loan debt to cause another recession on top of the recession. And all my career, Mike's career too, we've been pushing college and career readiness. But I realized if we did not do a better job of preparing our students about what happens after our program, about what we can do to help them fill out the FAFSA, that we in essence probably were contributing to that problem. And so we just set forth and really educated our board with a few Friday updates. I gave them a presentation 1 month and let them know I was hoping that we could adopt this as a graduation requirement. The next month, I did the same presentation as a review. I answered additional questions, got grilled a little bit by the board to make sure they had confidence in the plan that we had. And next thing we know, it was a 5-0 vote. And it just kind of took off from there. Go, Mike, to the next slide. One of the key parts of this whole thing is just having our opt-out. The opt-out is in place for circumstances beyond kids' control. We have not had in 4 years a kid's graduation status get compromised because of not completing the FAFSA or the California DREAM Act. Year one, we had 1,563 graduates, and of those graduates, only 11 did not fill out the FAFSA or the DREAM Act. And these were extreme cases, and as counselors or site administrators, I'm sure you can think of a number, but these were circumstances beyond the student's control, and we were not going to penalize the kid for that reason. Year two, we had a slight uptick in I believe the number of graduates, and we actually had 10 students that year opt out. And each year it's gotten to be less and less, and now we're down to a small handful. And all we're doing is, again, taking the rationale, the why, and educating our parents, educating our staff to make sure, and that's a crucial move, make sure your staff, your colleagues are on the same page. Because if they're not, they inadvertently could be getting in your way by saying things that may not be supportive for kids. And so it's so important that you educate the whole system on this. Next slide. And so why, the why, and these next few slides were my why, were our why in Val Verde, and they can be your why if you need to lead the leaders. Next slide. So we know that in the Inland Empire, we had the lowest percentage of adults with a college degree than any large metropolitan area in the country. In my mind, I was thinking it must be somewhere back east in a more—
I was thinking the South.
Yeah, I was thinking—
South. We always pick on the South.
I was
thinking maybe the Rust Belt, you know, something like that.
I was thinking in areas more of high poverty. I guess I was being stereotypical. But when I realized it was just us, I about fell out of my chair. Next slide. So we know that students who do fill out the FAFSA, more than 80% of qualified students who do not enroll in college cited costs as their main reason. We're at a point right now where your students are getting their acceptance letters in. We're hearing about them all, you know, in the last few weeks. I got accepted to Stanford. I got accepted to Columbia. I got accepted here. I want to go to my dream school, but I can't afford to go to my dream school now that I look at it. And so we're doing advanced work with those students, but we know that 60% of our kids enroll in the community college here locally. Now more than ever, if a student registers with a full course load and they actually fill out the FAFSA, they're going to get pretty much most of their way paid through the promise programs that they have. So it's even more important now than ever, I believe, now that they have these programs at the community college. Next slide. Okay, more of the why. We know that kids who do fill out the FAFSA persist. These are slides that I've used in presentations over the last 7 or 8 years, but these are big whys, you know, and we're all working hard to make sure we have these kids 13, 14 years in our system, right? Why would we not spend another 45 minutes with them to make sure they got their FAFSA filled out? This doesn't make any sense. We have such an investment in them. Why wouldn't we do this? These are things, again, share with your leaders. And this is the one stat that really moves me the most. We get into the business to make a difference. I'm convinced of that. And for every student that receives $1 in Cal Grant awards, our state will eventually see a $4.50 returns in increased taxes from these graduates and the employment offers that they get. So that is pretty moving for me. When I saw that, I'm like, this is it. We got to do this. Next slide. And then just through our interactions with the U.S. Department of Ed and Greg Darniter, who's the director of college and career readiness, Catalina said there's $2 billion left on the table. Back when we started, it was $500 million. So you could see there's more opportunities now for our kids than ever before. And if we know that it's 45 minutes, if we can figure out a system that actually takes into consideration layers of support to make sure that 45 minutes is taken care of, we in essence are going to be improving our communities and our state.
Yeah, and I think this is, this has never been about adding to the loan debt, across the nation. For me, we know in the community that we serve, our scholars are the ones that are going to qualify for free money for college. And you probably have students in your district that will qualify for free money for college. And so we're not trying to put kids into a lifetime of debt. What we're trying to do is maximize the investment that the state of California and the federal government have made by setting aside dollars for kids to access. We want to increase the number of students that are actually accessing those dollars that are set aside for them. This to me is a huge equity issue. And so that's kind of one of the things that, that drives our passion in this area, because we know in our entire region, all of us belong to the same region, this Inland Empire region, we all are part of a, whatever you want to call it, a system that is producing the result of having some of the lowest post-secondary degree attainment rates across the nation. Our entire economic vitality of our region would benefit from this. Many of our scholars in Val Verde will still be first-generation college-going students. And I imagine you could probably say the same thing for the students that you serve in your school districts. There's still many of our students that will be the first in their families to attend college. Now, that's the kind of stuff that gets me excited.
And if you wanted to take it a step or two deeper, students who do graduate from college with a degree are more likely to get a job with benefits. That means them and their family are taken care of. So now you're talking about not only the well-being of our state, but the physical well-being of our kids and their families, which can have huge impacts. So I hope I'm not sounding like I'm going off on the deep end here, but when you take a look at all the layers, it really does make a huge difference that I think most people have no idea. So the bottom line is, how can you make this a system-wide effort? And that's what we set out to do in 2017. So here's a picture of our management team. One of the things I promised our counselors that if we do make this a graduation requirement, I promise you that I'm going to be getting additional layers of support beyond your office in this whole effort. And that's what we did. So this right here is our dialing for dollars. And I asked all of our site administrators, all of our directors, all of our coordinators to get the list that IT put together for us of students who had not filled out their FAFSA yet. And we made 750 calls that year in about 2.5 hours. And we got through the list. The next day, there was lines outside the office of kids coming in, wanting to get their FAFSA completed. And year two, I believe we had about 450 calls we needed to make. When we got into year three, we didn't need to make any calls. Now it's part of the culture. Now it's part of the expectation. Everyone knows. We even talk about these things when their kids are in middle school. So there's no surprises. But we do offer a lot of incentives and a lot of recognition for the schools and the students that do get these completed. Next slide. Okay, so here's just a slide I created, and I spent about a half hour one day of just who does what. When I first, that summer when we first, before we actually had this requirement board approved, I went and talked to all of our counselors in the district, got their support with this initiative. Then I went and I met with all the government and econ teachers throughout the district to see if we could use some of their class time to get maybe the FSA ID completed, to see if we can maybe budget some time in there where we could have counselors come into their classroom, or maybe we could have the community college counselors come in and speak and do their presentations and actually help and assist kids get their FAFSA completed. We do know that financial literacy is part of the standards now, that teachers should be making sure they have time for this. And so this kind of was just great timing. And you could see if you go down the list, what the counselor does, site administrator, what our guidance technicians do, what our ASBs do to kind of help support the programs. Other staff that we have on site, our IT department. When we originally started this in 2017, not everyone was as totally as adept with web grants and tracking who had completed their FAFSA and who had not. So we had our IT generate those lists for our counselors, and then they sent them to them in an email every week. Now we don't need to do that because everyone is adept with web grants in the district. We have our family engagement center that actually does parent nights and presentations and getting the parents actually involved in knowing what FAFSA is, the California Dream Act, how much time it takes, what they'll need to kind of help their student, what our registrars, our district management team, cabinet, and our Board of Education. And then the bottom three layers, one's called TODEC. That's a local legal immigration service that I recruited in the process to kind of help, particularly with our English language learners, our undocumented students. When we started this initiative, this was at the height of the Trump administration and the whole DACA movement and all of that. So there was a lot of concern. A lot of people didn't want to give their information up. So there were a lot of nervous people. How are you going to support these students? Well, TODEC has long had a solid reputation in our community of helping, and they came in and actually did presentations themselves. They walked hand in hand with us with this initiative and made a huge impact. As I mentioned earlier, Moreno Valley College sends their counselors down to actually help with the FAFSAs and getting them completed. And then also just our partnership with the RCEC and California Student Aid Commission, the special reports we get from them, they're invaluable. And so we just really tried to harness everyone we could to be a part of this process, because that's what we promised that we would do. And, we will make sure everyone has access to this presentation, to make sure you have the why, to take a look at how we're doing things. And, just kind of compare it to how you have things going on in your school district. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Mike.
No, just, I always say to people, now that we know each other, you get free lifetime support. So anything that we're sharing or talking about, if we can help shorten the runway of implementation in your district, we're truly happy to help do that. So we'll make sure that, you get a copy of the presentation, and that you'll see Mark's contact information, my contact information at the end. So we've been living this for several years, and, we're even happy to talk about some of the critical voices that may come through as you start having these conversations. Mark and I discovered a long time ago that this work takes courage, and it takes courage from multiple people in multiple layers of the system. And so, we don't want you to be frightened when, somebody presents a critical perspective on this. We want
Yeah.
to give you the tools to know how to react to that and not take it personally, but just, see it as an opportunity to share some of the knowledge that you've gained on, why this is significant for our students and the families that we serve.
Yeah, we were getting blasted a little bit by a few people when we first did this initiative. There were some, I don't know if you ever see in the press enterprise, they'll do an article or any other media organization, and then people have the ability to write comments. Well, we got some comments that really stung, and it's just like, gosh, why does this person hate me so bad? And I just couldn't believe some of the comments I heard, but it was like they were against us doing this, and they were against it appeared that any students of color had the ability to move forward, and so, we didn't let that frighten us, but there may be some, scuttle that you may run into if you push this initiative in your district.
Yeah, my favorite one that will always be kind of in my memory is the one that began with "Leave it to the idiots at Val Verde." And I just thought, wow, grade F,
Well,
getting kids to complete high school, based on the air quotes magic of credit recovery and, making the college going process for our undocumented or mixed status families, was just a horrible thing to be doing. And you just wonder, like, what motivates people to make these comments. So anyways, Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
yeah, and so our Family Engagement Center is pretty active, and I don't think we're unique on that. I think a lot of the districts in Riverside County have a Family Engagement Center, and they're pretty busy. And I know it's not just in Val Verde because I see some of the postings that are taking place in other districts and social media, but ours is really active. Ours right now, this week presented, we're one of 8 school districts that are being recognized in the state for our Family Engagement Center this year. But they had a lot of FAFSA workshops that they did hand in hand with us. You could see they have TODEC Legal Center in there. They actually involved TODEC, and they came out and actually co-presented with our Family Engagement Center. We do the college kickoff like everyone, and we have kickoff events, obviously at every one of our schools, but also for our parents on Saturdays. And usually the one that was standing room only was the one on FAFSA. And yeah, it's been amazing. And I got to tell you, in the 4 years, I've only gotten 3 calls on this initiative from parents. And what I said when we first started this initiative is that we're going to remain sensitive to any situation that the parents bring to us. Let's educate them, let's inform them. But in the end, if they still have concerns, then we're going to allow them to opt out. And at this point, the number of opt-outs is so minimal. All this whole part of educating them. And if you just listen to people and explain to them, the one I got a few times was just, there was a concern on just identity theft. And, we're keeping all this information. And well, we don't keep any information, as you know. We just encourage them. We're a one-to-one district. We have them bring in their Chromebook. We at never any point have their personal information. Then I explained to the parents, the federal government has the best encryption money can buy. It's the same system that people utilize to do their taxes. So we don't have your information. All we're here is just here to help, and usually at that point, people are like, okay, I'll go with this then. And so, but it could be a myriad of different reasons. And so because everyone is saying the same things, it really has had an impact in the ability of our community to trust us. And then Mr. McCormick just put this slide up. These are just some of the activities that are happening on our high school campuses. This is all funneled through our ASBs. Mike, did you want to hit this one?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. This is the exciting stuff. It's about creating a narrative around this initiative that's fun and enjoyable. The last thing you want to do is present this as another compliance piece for teachers and students and counselors to be following. And so, getting the ASB directors and the ASB students involved was one of the best things that we could have done. You can see some of the flyers that they've created. They go out on their social media. And if you go back and take a look at any of the Instagram pages for these high schools, Rancho Verde, Citrus Hill, Orange Vista, even Val Verde High School. Yeah, Dinah Green. Thank you, Brittany, for recognizing Dinah Green is just unbelievable. We've been blessed with some amazing ASB directors. You know, most of the kids in our region know about the Coachella Music and Arts Festival. And so this is Cashchella you'll see in there. Cashchella in the dark. This happened this year. This was a drive-through in the dark. We had DJ music and laser lights and got the kids all excited about it. You know, Citrus does FAFSA Fridays and FAFSA Fiestas. Orange Vista High School hosted the Money Gras instead of Mardi Gras. Because it's in nice alignment with Mardi Gras. So you get people involved and you open up their opportunity for creativity, and all of a sudden kids want to do this and teachers want to help out, and everybody's there to support the counselors. And one of the things we were doing pre-pandemic, which is a huge incentive for our students, is every student who completed their FAFSA or California Dream Act application got additional graduation tickets for their graduation ceremony. Now, there's really no cost in doing that, right? And a lot of these things are very like low cost or no cost. It's just about using the existing resources to be able to provide some incentives for students, get them excited about things, create that party atmosphere. We've got a really good relationship with KISS FM, you know, the radio station out of Los Angeles, and they'll come out and send a DJ, and they want to be part of events like this.
Get the in and
so
out
it's just been a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. Next slide.
Let me see here. Sorry, I got excited.
No, but like your district, we try to celebrate college kickoff and college readiness throughout. So this is not a separate initiative, but it's intertwined with our college readiness initiatives. And so here's one of our elementary schools, and all of their staff are all dressed up. And, you know, I don't think I probably need to explain this. I know these are strategies some of you are using right now, but it starts early in Val Verde, you know.
Yeah, that's one of our teachers there.
Yeah.
You know, that's in her graduation. But if you're not doing something where your valedictorians from your high schools are returning to the elementary schools that they attended when they were in your district, that's a really powerful event, and another way to just build that culture where, you know, if you ever wanted to see your kindergarten and first grade teachers just break into tears, send their former students back when they're valedictorians now, because what that does is it connects those early grade teachers to a student's educational journey. A third grade teacher can say, man, I was a part of that kid's journey, and now they're valedictorians. And then they come back, those valedictorians, and visit their elementary schools and get the kids, you know, the elementary age kids, very excited about this process. So just a great way. Again, really not a lot of cost associated with this. Get a little van or a bus and haul the kids back to the elementaries, and you got yourself something really powerful.
I believe these pictures were, they were in that newspaper. What was the,
not from Forbes.
Forbes, yeah. This was an article that came out in Forbes on Val Verde and just the district-wide initiative. We've had 2 Forbes write-ups and just recently the Wall Street Journal on just some of this stuff.
Right on.
And then here we are. Here's a picture of one of the kindergarten students. And what we're, as Mr. McCormick said, we have rituals where kids will come back down to the elementary and will actually parade through in their cap and gowns. And just this picture right here is of a kindergartner. And what our plans are now is to start taking pictures of our kindergartners. And we do the jumbo screens. And for all of those students who make their way through the system, we're going to have a picture of their obviously their senior year picture, and then a picture of them when they were in kindergarten, just to kind of talk and just do a little bit more of what Mr. McCormick was saying, tying the whole system together. And when these teachers see their former students graduating and they hear all about the number of AP classes they've taken and where they're going. It's a tearful event, to say the least. Okay. Let me click on that one more time. Okay, so Cal Grants offered, you can kind of see where everything is at and just kind of how it's kind of gone. This, just from pushing FAFSA. Now, if we had this many scholarships, we'd be in the newspaper, right? But it's just Cal Grant Awards. And so we don't know the specific dollar amount. We can only do estimations on this, but wouldn't it be great if we can get that information and just not only say this is how many more FAFSAs were completed or DREAM Act applications, but this is how much more money was funneled in through the initiative. People respond to dollars. Now, I don't always respond to money or numbers. So, yeah. And this is just the college going rate as it's slightly starting to go up consistently over time in our district. And like I said, that culture and climate goes. Go to the next slide. But just some of the myths that we've encountered is, parents who don't fill out a tax return, sometimes it's impossible. So we've addressed all of these things, identity theft, fear among undocumented families. You can't make the FAFSA, systematic. My kid's not going to college, or my kid's going to military. And we address all these items as a lot of the counselors do here. And so we just make sure that it doesn't just stay with the counselors, but that information administrators know, our parents know, our family engagement center is knowing. So we echo the message. And I think that has made a big difference. It's the knowledge campaign. So go to the next slide. And here's a picture of the leaderboard. A lot of you now in our county, as Catalina said, are just doing an amazing job with getting your numbers up, right? Well, what we do in Val Verde is we'll take a weekly look at the numbers. And if we notice that we're starting to trail behind, then we'll call the principal and ask them, hey, what's happening? I evaluate the principals every month. They sit down with me in cabinet, and our high school principals, this is a regular topic of conversation. Hey, what's going on? I'm seeing you're starting to trail behind here. What's happening? And, so there's that layer of accountability. We expect them to be following this and looking at this because after all, it is a board goal. We made sure that we're going to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep those numbers up. And, if we had another district pass us up in numbers, we're going to be celebrating right hand in hand with them. All we care about is that we're maximizing the number of our kids who have these opportunities and that they have the ability to fulfill that aspiration of higher education once they leave us. Did you want to hit this, Mike?
Yeah, this is just in line with our portrait of a graduate. Many of the districts, certainly in Riverside County, have something similar, portrait of a graduate, but this really serves as our North Star. Unifies our business community, our parents, our students, our teachers in thinking around, these attributes: critical thinking, flexibility, creativity, communication, and collaboration. We think those are the transferable skills that are going to carry students successfully into their post-secondary aspirations and also their careers. And so this has been a great way for us also to kind of reinforce not just kind of the traditional models around teaching and learning, but moving more into that deeper learning. And so this is just another piece of kind of building that culture that's a future-ready culture, whether students are moving immediately into the workforce or they have college or military, whatever it is. We think these are the primary skills that'll assist students in preparing for their future, not our past.
And we're getting towards the tail end here of our presentation, but sometimes when you're trying to implement new things, you run into resistance. And we talked about that earlier, how we were getting criticized by some of the external community members. They weren't our community members. They were people from outside the community. We just recently implemented an ethnic studies graduation requirement, and we're making extra efforts to see what we could do to reach out to our African-American families. Well, we got blew up because of that. I think we had 7 articles printed because we were making that effort. And these weren't local news medias. These were medias in other states. And we had 7 different articles that were written. And finally, someone locally reached out to us. We explained what we were doing, and they wrote a very positive one. What I guess I'm trying to say is this: anything worth doing in education, I found sometimes can be a lonely road. It's too bad it has to be that way, but sometimes when you have something special and you're actually trying to do something with it, you're going to face some obstacles. Sometimes you'll run into resistance. So when I was taking coursework at USC, this was probably the book that I got the most out of. Sometimes resistance is just, it revolves around 3 things: lack of knowledge, a lack of motivation, or there's things in the organization getting in the way. Sometimes it's all 3, but don't back down when you get into that resistance. Sometimes it could be for political reasons. We all know, but I would take a step further, analyze the situation and say, is this a knowledge problem? We knew that knowledge was a big campaign for our initiative to be systematic. And I think we accomplished that. Is it a motivation barrier? Well, if it's the motivation barrier, use these slides on the why, educate them. If it's an organizational barrier, you need to look at your organization and get rid of the red tape, okay? Get those things out of the way that are getting in the way of the student's best interest. And that's the difference between a leader that's leading for equity and a leader that's just running the ship. I'll stop there because I don't want to get negative. So, but I look back at that. And then, as Mike said earlier, we're here for you. We'll be happy to ask your, even talk to your superintendents or assistant superintendents, or even your board of education. We've done these things for many districts already. And if you feel that your district can benefit of it, and if they have an interest, all they need to do is reach out to us.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And great question in the chat from Brittany. She's asking about, we've talked about the military on multiple occasions, and that being something that, sometimes we have parents or students that don't think it's necessary to fill out the FAFSA because their child is going into the military. And Brittany brings up a great point that, what happens if a student gets injured prior to basic training or something like that. But no, I think, Brittany, this isn't any sort of a values proposition on our part. We've just are communicating what we've heard from our parents. And there's been some resistance from parents to complete the FAFSA if they know their child is committed to the military. But I think you bring up a great point that we should still suggest that they do complete the FAFSA. And I see Catalina back on. I'm going to stop sharing, and I think we got some time for some questions here.
Yes, we do. And I want to make sure they understand how this connects. I think I made them all scared when I sent an email and said, the governor's ready to pass this. So definitely what you just described, I think it goes to your opt-out process. And Brittany from Lake, you could put your contact information back up. Superintendent McCormick, they want to make sure they have that so they can give it to their superintendents, which they probably know you. But Brittany, I'm going to speak to Brittany from Lake Elsinore. She's correct. And I think part of what they do in Val Verde is they educate the family and the student, exactly what you talked about, Brittany. And then if the family chooses to opt out, then after being educated, they have a sit-down meeting, etc. Then they know they did their due diligence. The student and the parent exercise their right for it. It wasn't just, I wasn't informed, I wasn't told. So they leave there knowing, hey, my school did try to help me. Julie, who can share, we'll have another one from Paris. They'll talk about how they serve a lot of Native American students, and they'll say, oh, I'm not going to do the FAFSA because I get money from my tribe, etc. They're going to pay for my college. And then they come back in May. My tribe said I have to do my FAFSA still, right? And so my Native American tribe. And so they, it's just educating our community that's so, like Mark talked about earlier, they're so dependent on us. And so I think Mark or Mike, if you share a little bit about the opt-out process, and then I'm going to go a little bit into detail of what are our next steps and a few more questions. So please put them in the chat. We're going to stay on as long as we need to answer the questions. But if you can share a little bit about that opt-out process, because it's not just here's a form, get your mom to sign in and bring it back. You have a process. Can you please share that one?
Yeah, well, basically, they schedule a meeting with the parent and the student. They sit them down, they explain their why. They let them know, all of what we just went over, that we're not taking their information, we're not reporting them to anyone. And after they hear all of our why on the importance of doing this, after that, then they have the ability, the parent, to opt out. And the opt-out form is just a box they check, and then they sign off, and we put that in their CUNE folder. But it goes back to just what I said in the beginning, that we wanted to remain sensitive to our parents. But like I said, the amount of opt-outs we get is so minimal.
And I think, Mark, just for like hyper clarity, who does the parent actually see for the opt-out form? Is it the counselor? Is it the site level administration? Is it you?
Sometimes it's both. Sometimes they'll call me and they'll explain the situation. But I don't get very many of those calls at all. I think I might have gotten one last year. But generally it starts with the counselor. The counselor will interact with the administrator. If the administrator has time, they'll be in there with the parent and the counselor explaining. And that's probably the reason why we don't get too many, because they actually take time to do the follow through on those.
Okay, good. Perfect.
Okay.
So I want to share, if you can, Superintendent McCormick, you got to testify last week on the bill. So I want everyone to understand, if you're late to join, I put in the chat. So there's the governor's language for K-12. This is something he wants starting next year. So it's not one of those bills in 2 years. It'll start this fall if it passes, and it's something he wants. It's in his K-12 budget and it's his higher education budget. So he has them in both. I put those in the chat early on. I'll put them again before you leave in case you were late to join. And then we have an assembly bill, and that's the bill that leads that Superintendent McCormick just testified on last week. And so what will happen is he wants it in his budget, and this bill is going to make it through. So if the bill makes it through to his desk, of course he's going to sign it. This is something he wants. It's in his budget. So the kind of just the rationale behind that. But Superintendent McCormick, because I don't want them, it's not done, right? We don't know it's on 100% until May revise. But can you share your experience on when you testified, and what were the comments of the assembly members in the room of how you're feeling about this?
Yeah, I was actually surprised, because we went into the testimony thinking it might be a split room. And there was 5 people in the 5 assembly members in the assembly education committee that were present, and it was pretty powerful. I was one of the key witnesses along with Ms. Cifuentes, and this is how powerful I think it was at the end. First of all, it passed out of committee on a vote of 6-0, so it was unanimous vote passing out of committee onto the Appropriations Committee. But the other thing that happened is that there were 2 other assembly members who decided to join the bill with Assembly Member Cervantes, who was the author of the bill. So that's very powerful when you have other assembly members who want to join and co-sponsor the bill. So I think as a result of that committee testimony, it just made sense for those assembly members. I think they understand better the reasons why. I think early on, there was a lot of discussion around, how does this impact our mixed status families, maybe our undocumented families? What does that look like? And I think our elected officials were having a difficult time seeing, some of the benefit of that, or just being sensitive to it. I think maybe it was both of those things. And, one of the things we said was, look, do we want to have our undocumented or mixed status families remain in the shadows? Or do we want to empower them and their families to make solid decisions based on accurate information? And I think when we put it that way, it was like all of a sudden people went, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing I think that resonated with them, two things, and then I'll finish it up. One was, we've invested 13 years of time and energy in our students' education. Why not give them another 45 minutes? Get the FAFSA California Dream Act application completed. We can certainly figure out how to do that. And then the final thing was, state of California, federal government have made the investments. The money is there for students, but there's all these, millions of dollars that are left being unclaimed. So let's get closer to maximizing the benefit that these major agencies have invested in trying to get kids to go to college. We know that's the number one barrier, is the financial barrier. So let's do this as a whole system and, support our students in their college aspirations. So Catalina, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. So I put in the chat again, the budget proposal, so you have time to read it. I think you could just, when you open it up, do a quick search, put FAFSA, you'll see the plan. Like I said, it's in terms of the bill and the conversations that are happening now that we'll know by May is the cost piece, right? So if Palm Springs Unified, they're going to, it's a requirement, they're going to put a plan together. And so you are leaders in the forefront. These two amazing leaders have been doing webinars for months across the state, but they really wanted, you guys have the upper hand. You've been doing this work, but I think now you really have the ammunition, like it's school-wide, it's district-wide, it's a requirement for the state, but it's how you deliver it and how we deliver it as a county. So if it does pass, there will be more to come. These two amazing leaders have agreed to do some more professional development or coaching with your leaders and your administrators, because if you go to that last slide that was shared earlier, the grid, it takes a team. It's not just the 5 counselors or 6 counselors at one high school. I was there when Superintendent McCormick was phone banking families, and he had a room Spanish speaking for Spanish speaking families. And I was there. He does the work, just, he's not shy to do all of it. And I think that's what it's going to take for this. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And so I know we got asked for your contact information. So I'm going to pull that up so they can get that in case, and they've gone to Oakland, they've gone all over the state to work with other administrators to help them think differently. I felt it was important that everyone heard. I didn't feel like there wasn't enough people that knew this was on the table and that's so close to being passed, and it's going to start in the fall, that I wanted to make sure. I said, we got to put something together and give them the latest information. So with that, like I said, I don't see any additional questions in the chat, but I do want to let Superintendent McCormick and Mark have any closing thoughts or message for our county leaders.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, unfortunately, I've got to jump off to another meeting right now, but it's so great to get to know everybody today a little bit and, take a look at that. Lifetime free professional development. Mark and I, this is our passion. And so if we can be of assistance in some ways, please feel free to reach out on us. You can see our contact information there. So everybody have a wonderful rest of the day and a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Okay. Mark, any last words?
No, Catalina, no last words. Thanks for the opportunity to present again.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you, everyone. I know we will send out the PowerPoint, this video recording. If this passes, like we're feeling it's going to, we're going to pull back and offer more intense professional development and support by job alikes. So registrars in Val Verde, maybe helping training registrars in your district. If this passes, we want to take #1 in the nation, but this county you better be #1. So if you know me, you know I'm competitive. So I just want to thank you for being here. I know you're crazy busy. There's so much going on, but I really felt it was important. You knew these things were on the table, and too many conversations I had these last 2 weeks, I felt like not enough people knew. So thank you. I hope you have a great afternoon, and we will send the PowerPoint and the recording out to everyone. Have a great afternoon, and thank you for everything you do.